Tonight, House of Representatives to probe disturbing advisory by the National Youth Service Corps, urging parents to prepare ransom for Corps members in case they are abducted in the course of their national call-up. In another 2 weeks, former PDP National Publicity Secretary Olisa Metu faces retrial for the same money laundering cases that the appeal court nullified last December. A new beginning for the Nigeria Police as the federal government flags off a special protection unit base built by the NDDC promises to prioritize welfare of officers. And military leader in Guinea presents charter for civilian transition, bars members of the ruling council from participating in the country's election. And more international news from our London studio.
On business news tonight, African Export-Import Bank launches Pan-African payment platform to ease cross-border transactions.
On sports news tonight, newly crowned world heavyweight boxing champion Alexander Usyk returns to Ukraine, expects a rematch against Anthony Joshua in February or March next year.
And from the Federal Capital Territory, civil society organization Budget advises states to prioritize revenue generation in order to recover from the economic shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic.
We begin from the National Assembly, where an advisory said to have emanated from the National Youth Service Corps containing security tips for Corps members is now a subject of investigation by the House of Representatives. The lower chamber has mandated its Committee on Youth Development to investigate the alleged insertion of the advisory for the payment of ransom into the pamphlets as part of security tips. The matter was raised by the Minority Leader, Mr. Ndudi Elumelu, who expressed concern that the inclusion of the said section shows a complete collapse in the security architecture of the country. Our correspondent, Terry Kumi, has details of this and other activities at today's plenary in the House.
Lawmakers in the Green Chamber react to a publication in the public space allegedly linked to the National Youth Service Corps, suggesting that Corps members should prepare to pay ransom if they are kidnapped.
This is the pamphlet that they are using everywhere. And the section 65 is, the heading is advisory tips to minimize being victims of kidnappers or hostage takers. 65 it says, when traveling in a high-risk roads such as Abuja, Kaduna, Abuja, Lokoja, Okene or Aba, Port Harcourt roads, then alert your family members, friends, and colleagues in order to have someone on hand to pay off the ransom that could be demanded.
The Committee on Youth Development is then saddled with the responsibility of investigating the matter. In the meantime, the House is unhappy with the Senate on the handling of bills emanating from the House.
If there is a gray area, Mr. Speaker, through which the House and the Senate have to come into those equitable and harmonious agreements, Mr. Speaker, it's the principal officers that takes care of that. And that's why we have principal officers. But stopping Senate bill,
I don't think there's any problem with the Senate. Nobody has any problem with the Senate. It's just important that bills that come from this House should receive the same treatment as bills that come from the Senate. I think perhaps what is going on is a problem of is an administrative problem between the administrative staff. So, Clerk, I'm putting this on you.
The Speaker then directs that all concurrence bills be stepped down until the matter is resolved. The House is also disturbed by the state of federal roads damaged by rainfall.
Worried that this existential threat is posing a danger to human safety and causing significant disruption to both economic and social activities, motorists and commuters are enduring untold hardship, and the security of lives and property of Nigerians have been greatly threatened considerably.
And like the Senate, the House considers and approves the report of its Finance Committee on the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy Paper 2022 to 2024, leaving all proposed parameters unchanged. The House then approves the projected new borrowings of 4.89 trillion naira. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
And over to the courts, where the Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has fixed October the 15th to hear all applications relating to a 20 billion naira bailout loan allegedly belonging to the Kogi State government set to be warehoused by Sterling Bank PLC. Justice Chukwujeku Aneke fixed the date following an application made by counsel to Kogi State government, Professor Sam Erugo, who told the court that he needed time to study the counter affidavit filed by the EFCC to the processes. The vacation judge, Justice Tijani Ringim, had on August the 31st granted an ex parte application for an interim forfeiture of the sum after taking arguments from the EFCC's counsel. And with the vacation over, the suit was reassigned to Justice Aneke, and at the resumed hearing today, counsel to Kogi State government and senior advocate of Nigeria, Professor Erugo, told the court that his client has filed processes challenging the interim order granted by Justice Ringim. He also told the court that the EFCC had filed its counter objections to the processes. The counsel to the EFCC, Rotimi Oyedepo, admitted to the court that he had been served with the processes and had equally filed his documents to counter the arguments raised. And after listening to both parties, Justice Aneke adjourned the matter till October the 15th for the hearing of all applications. And staying with legal matters, the Federal High Court in Abuja has fixed October the 14th for the rearrangement of the former National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, Mr. Olisa Metuh, over alleged 400 million naira fraud. This follows the absence of the new trial judge, Justice Obiora Egwatu, in court. Mr. Metuh's retrial could not proceed despite his presence and that of all the parties involved in the court. The Court of Appeal Abuja had on December the 16th, 2020, nullified a Federal High Court judgment that convicted and sentenced Mr. Metuh to 7 years imprisonment for money laundering. The appellate court held that the judgment of the trial judge, Okonabank, was tainted with bias and subsequently sent the case file back to the Federal High Court for retrial by another judge. Metuh will be retried over allegations of receiving the sum of 400 million naira from the former National Security Advisor, Colonel Sambo Dasuki, prior to the 2015 presidential election without contract approval or execution. And now to the aviation sector, where unions in Arik Air have stated that no external body can stop the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority from issuing an air operator's certificate to any airline that has fulfilled the requirement. This was the outcome of a rally held by two aviation unions at Arik headquarters in Lagos. Meanwhile, another aviation union, the Association of Nigerian Aviation Professionals, had earlier asked the NCAA to halt the air operator license issued to NG Eagle, an independent entity being floated by the Asset Management Company of Nigeria, AMCON. Our aviation correspondent, Bukola Joe Oketumbi, reports.
Union members in Arik Air at a rally within the headquarters of the airline in Ikeja, Lagos, to show their support for a new airline, NG Eagle, an independent entity being floated by the Asset Management Corporation of Nigeria. For the unions in Arik, the decision by AMCON to float another airline sits well with them.
We can count on the NCAA to do due diligence and ensure that whoever party has gone through due process and completed all the due processes of the AOC, that we are sure that the NCAA will accordingly issue an AOC. Leave the issue of debt to the two parties, the one who is owing and the one who is owed.
However, this idea is not going down well with another aviation union, which is asking the Minister of Aviation to stop the issuance of an air operating certificate to NG Eagle over an unpaid debt.
When we carry out our research, we found out that those airlines that were enjoying the services being provided, they were not paying. If we allow it, they will not pay that debt. And they are deceiving Nigerians, even deceiving government, By the time they get that OOC, that Nigerian Eagle, they will turn around and be saying that it is national carrier, and it is not national carrier.
With Arik Air under AMCON's management since 2017, calls to the asset manager for clarifications were not returned as at press time. AMCON announced 4 years ago that it was taking over the carrier owing to its heavy financial debt that was threatening to ground the airline. Bukola Joe Oketumbi, Channels Television News.
The Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, has donated a special protection unit of the Nigeria Police Force in Rivers State. The 68-unit residential quarters and administrative block was inaugurated by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, on behalf of President Muhammadu Buhari. President Osinbajo noted, or Professor Osinbajo, I should say, noted that the provision of housing for police personnel is an important feature of the police reform being undertaken by the federal government.
The Nigeria Police Special Protection Unit Barracks is located in Omagwa, Ikwere local government area of Rivers State, not far from Port Harcourt, the state capital. The just completed residential quarters and administrative block for SPU personnel is the reason for this gathering, which has the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, and leading heads in the police and the Niger Delta Development Commission, NDDC, as well as federal lawmakers. A display by the residents of the host community showing how well they acknowledge the impact such a center will have on them. The Vice President does the honor of cutting the tape to inaugurate the facility on behalf of the President. The facility is built and donated by the NDDC, a move it describes as a commitment to the security agenda of the federal government.
The facility we are unveiling today consists of administrative block, including a gate house and total of 64 units of accommodation. These units includes the commander's residence, the second-in-command's residence, and 64-bedroom flats and other ancillary facilities totaling, in terms of total facilities here we have 68 flats.
The Inspector General of Police expresses his delight at the donation of what he believes is a legacy project.
It is a legacy project which is the first massive and purpose-building facility for the SPU since the creation of the unit in 2009. By this project, the NDDC has made a very bold and clear statement that the agency is not just out to be on the sideline, but to take the bull by the horn and support the federal government in addressing critical infrastructure deficits, which impacts on the optimal operational efficiency of the Nigeria Police Force.
The Minister of the Niger Delta surprisingly takes a swipe at Governor Nyesom Wike over some federal projects.
From Warri in Efurum all the way to Oron, the most dangerous part right now is the Eleme Junction. And the Governor of Rivers said, if we delayed at all, because you were touching a lot of federal projects, we thought you would touch that area. But since you have neglected to touch that area, we assure you that we are already on the road. Our city has started work, and very soon, I'm sure you were leaving that one so that you will use it to focus. But then, I'm assuring you that we are going to disappoint you, because we are going to complete that East-West road, and on time.
Your Excellency.
Governor Wike, in his response, berates the NDDC setup, calling it an opportunistic venture for politicians.
You see, this is the problem in Nigeria. Look at a project like this that was awarded 2011-12. 10 years after is when we are commissioning it. And thank God the Minister of Niger Delta has said that it will be different altogether. NDDC has been a cash cow for politicians. Cash cow for politicians. You will see competition who will be MD. You will see competition who will be ED Finance, ED Project. Why? These are people that will make sure money is available for politics. Let nobody say that the problem of NDDC is only of Niger Delta. No. The problem of NDDC is entire Nigeria.
President Muhammadu Buhari's speech is delivered by the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo. His remark addresses the provision of living quarters for security personnel as an important feature of the police reform.
In the past months, we have been undertaking a major reform of the police. First, we believe that we must increase the number of police personnel. So we have set yearly recruitment targets. We are also in the process of re-equipping our personnel, both in personal gear and hardware. An important feature of the reform is accommodation for men and officers. And I have directed that the building of barracks for men and women of the police force should be done in collaboration with the social housing effort of the Family Homes Fund. This will ensure speedy execution of all of the projects and all of the barracks that need to be provided. The cumulative impact of this and other similar projects will be the improvement of security in the state and the consolidation of the economic and social life of the people of this area.
The Nigeria Police has the potential of being one of the best in Africa if its welfare personnel, including housing needs, is given top priority.
In part two, after the break, Nigerian Navy disowns Commodore Jamila Malafa barely 24 hours after making stunning revelation about illicit arms deals during a House public hearing on small arms and light weapons. Join us again. Welcome back to the News at 10. If you're just joining us, here's a recap of our major stories. House of Representatives orders investigation of disturbing advisory by the NYSC, urging parents to prepare ransom for corps members in case of abduction. Former PDP National Publicity Secretary Olisa Metu faces retrial for the same money laundering allegations earlier nullified by an appeal court. Federal government flags off a special protection unit base built by the NDDC, promises to prioritize welfare of officers. And military leader in Guinea presents charter for civilian transition, bars members of the ruling council from participating in the country's election. The Nigerian Navy has dissociated itself from the submissions made by Commodore Jamila Malafa at a House public hearing on a bill to establish a commission against the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Commodore Malafa, who represented the Navy at the hearing, had alleged that Chadian soldiers engaged in the illicit trade of small arms, thereby fueling the insecurity in Nigeria. But in a statement today, the Nigerian Navy disowned her claims, saying they do not represent the position of the Navy. It says, the Nigerian Navy appreciates the indelible contributions of our regional partners and neighbors in the fight against small arms and light weapons trafficking. The Navy adds that Nigeria maintains robust diplomatic security relationships with neighboring countries and commits to deepening the existing arrangement. To electoral matters, the Independent National Electoral Commission INEC says it will publish the final register of voters and a list of candidates for the Anambra governorship election on October the 7th. After reviewing its preparations for the conduct of the poll scheduled for November the 6th, 2021, the electoral umpire noted that it has made appreciable progress in fixing the facilities of the commission, which were destroyed during attacks on its offices in the state. It adds that the permanent voters' cards PVCs of the new registrants will also be ready for collection on or shortly after October the 7th, as it also restates the resolve to conduct a credible election in Anambra State. Let's now cross over to our Abuja studio for more on the News at 10 with Terry Ikumi. Good evening, Terry.
Hello, Kayode. A civil society organization, Budget, is recommending that states across the country should prioritize production and expansion of their revenue base in order to recover from the economic shocks of the COVID-19 pandemic. Speaking at the official presentation of the 2021 State Fiscal Performance Report in Abuja, Budget says Lagos, Rivers, Anambra, Ebonyi, and Cross River states rank high among states that have demonstrated the ability to meet their annual operating expenses using their internally generated revenue.
Round of applause, please.
It's the official presentation of the 2021 report on the fiscal performance of 36 states by Budget, a Nigerian civil society organization. The 148-page document contains information about revenue generation and spendings by state governments with the objective of helping the states recover from the fiscal shocks of COVID-19.
In the past, we have looked at export potentials in each of the 36 states. And this year, we are happy to also research into what are options, fiscal options that the 36 states in Nigeria have to be able to bounce back the economy.
According to the report, 5 states including Lagos, Rivers, Anambra, Ebonyi and Cross River are the leading states with the ability to meet their annual operating expenses using their internally generated revenue. The keynote speaker underscores the urgent need for states to focus on production and grow their revenue base.
The time has come to shift focus towards exploiting the factors and resource endowment of our state. Everybody is talking about what to share and how to share. And nobody is paying attention to what we need to produce and how we should produce.
Economic shocks from COVID-19 took a toll on the internally generated revenue of states, as well as their share of the federal allocations in 2020. To build back strongly from the COVID-19 induced economic crunch, budget officials are recommending that states should explore alternative revenue generation strategies, including expanding the tax net.
Nigeria has to smoothen its revenue curve and make it heavily dependent on taxes. There is no other way. Now, the problem with taxation is that you can't tax what does not exist. If you tax zero, then you get zero. So we also have to, so focusing on taxation might be the wrong question. Nigeria needs to focus on prolonged growth.
COVID-19 pandemic undoubtedly affected the finances of states, and as many struggle to recover from the fiscal shocks, there is a consensus amongst economists to focus on production.
Still on IGR, a further look at the State of State report by Budget shows that internally generated revenue of states took a hit from the COVID-19 pandemic, cutting down the accumulative IGR by 3.43% in 2020. And according to the report, Lagos State was the exception, recording 5.08% IGR growth in the period, despite being the epicenter of the pandemic, a testament to the resilience of its fiscal strategy. Rivers State topped the overall 2021 fiscal performance ranking, while only 3 states in the country could meet their operating expenses obligations from their revenues. They are Lagos, Rivers, and Anambra. Now to security matters. The National Human Rights Commission is reiterating its readiness to work with government institutions as well as security agencies to prosecute perpetrators of attacks and provide assistance to victims of abduction. That's according to the Executive Secretary of the Commission, Mr. Tony Ojukwu, at the Stakeholders Forum on the Safe School Declaration in Abuja. Mr. Ojukwu notes that the role of the Commission in advancing the Safe School initiative has become crucial as a response to the large number of abductions and kidnapping of students within their school environment in recent times. Now, the Federal Capital Territory Police says 57 members of the proscribed Islamic movement in Nigeria, IMN, have been arrested after a joint security operation dispersed their procession in the nation's capital. In a statement, the spokesperson of the FCT Police, Mrs. Josephine Ade, explains that no casualty was recorded during the operation, which disrupted traffic flow on the Gwarimpa axis of the Kubwa Highway. However, a member of the sect, Mr. Abdullahi Mohammed, explains that 8 of their members were killed during the operation. He adds that the movement was only holding a peaceful procession to mark the end of a 40-day religious mourning period for Imam Hussein, the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad. Now staying with security, at least 20 civilians are feared killed in a suspected airstrike in Daba Masara, a border town in Monguno local government area of Borno State. Local sources told Channels Television that the civilians were in their farms on the river bank on Sunday when a jet flew over the area and dropped bombs in 3 different locations. Daba Masara is a farming and fishing community located on the Nigerian side of the Lake Chad region. When contacted on the matter, the Directorate of the Air Force Public Relations promised to get back to us. A similar incident occurred in Buwari village, Yunusare local government area of Yobe State about 2 weeks ago when a fighter jet of the Nigerian Air Force accidentally hit the village, killing about 10 persons. And in Osun State, at least 1 person has been reported killed by armed robbers who attacked a commercial bank in Ire, the headquarters of Borikwe local government area. Eyewitness said the robbers arrived at a bank located beside the palace of the traditional ruler of the town around 3 p.m. and operated for about 30 minutes, carting away unspecified amount of money from the bank. The robbers were said to have shot sporadically into the air and engaged the police in a gun duel before they fled the scene, escaping with their loot. The state police spokesperson Yemisi Okpalola told Channels Television that a tactical team had been deployed to trail the robbers. Now, when the news at 10 returns, federal government announces incentives and tax rebates for investors in gas-powered car manufacturing. Join us again.
Now to the auto industry, where the federal government has announced incentives and tax rebates for Nigerians who are able to key into its vision to introduce gas-powered vehicles. Speaking at a meeting organized by the National Automotive Design and Development Council in Abuja, the director in charge of industrial development at the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment, Mr. Adewale Bakari, explains that the initiative targets foreign exchange savings, employment generation, and safe environment.
These vehicles run on gas. They were converted from petrol-powered vehicles to gas-powered. This effort by the National Automotive Design and Development Council is coming barely few months after the federal government rolled out its National Gas Expansion Program, NGEP, which involves the conversion of fuel-powered vehicles and generators from petrol to gas.
The continued use of conventional fuels such as petrol and diesel in vehicles contribute to global warming and climate change, which is detrimental to human health and the pollution of our precious natural environment. Natural gas vehicles that use autogas, also known as liquefied petroleum gas LPG or compressed natural gas CNG to power vehicles. CNG and LPG power vehicles are safe, cost-effective, and environmentally friendly.
While some are calling for the revival of the nation's auto policy to provide for its legal operation in the country, the government is looking at how to incentivize interest in the initiative.
We are in the process of reviving the Nigeria automotive policy. It is therefore a good opportunity to integrate autogas into the policy, thereby providing the legal framework and a learning environment for its operation in the country.
A combination of rebates and incentives shall be adopted to encourage the use of autogas among commercial vehicles and private vehicle owners. Many countries across the globe have been able to achieve this in the penetration of autogas to enrich the energy mix in their various countries through the adoption of such strategies.
The overall significance of this initiative is to save the environment from pollution, create jobs, and save the nation's foreign exchange.
And to to some news from the Lagos Judicial Panel. Given the nature of injuries sustained from 9 p.m. at the Lekki toll gate on the night of October the 20th, 2020, live military-grade ammunition was fired at some point by yet-to-be-identified persons. Well, that's a summary of the evidence of Mr. Adeye Willie Harry, an expert witness hired by the Lagos State government to investigate the shooting incident at the toll gate. The witness, who is the executive director of a UK-based forensic and ballistic company, testified via Zoom at today's proceedings of the Lagos panel investigating the incident. He said the investigation showed that there was no military-grade live high-velocity ammunition fired at the protesters at Lekki Tollgate on October the 20th last year within the time frame of 6:30 p.m. and 8:34 p.m., but added that the military-grade ammunition was used later after 9 p.m. After his testimony, the expert witness was cross-examined by different lawyers representing the police, LCC, NSAS protesters, and the Nigerian Bar Association. The chairman of the panel, Justice Doris Okuobi, adjourned the proceedings, saying that the panel will give its ruling on the Lekki tollgate shooting at a later date. A public library in Ilorin, the Kwara State capital, named after former Senate leader, the late Olushola Saraki, has been demolished. The library was constructed and named after the late Saraki by Ilorin West local government many years ago. It was gathered that the building was demolished by the current Transition Implementation Committee of the local government. The committee claimed that the facility is being used as a hideout by criminals. The TIC chairman for Ilorin West, Mukhtar Motosho, in a statement promised to remodel the facility as an ICT center and still retain the honorary name after the rehabilitation. When Channels Television visited the facility this evening, it was under lock and key. And former President of the Senate, Dr. Bukola Saraki, and his sister, Minister of State for Transportation, Senator Gbemisola Saraki, in separate statements, have condemned the demolition. They accused the state government of deliberately masterminding the exercise to destroy their father's legacies. Back to the courts, where the former governor of Imo State, Ikedio Hakim, has vowed to appeal the decision of the Federal High Court delivered on Monday, which granted leave for the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice to take over his prosecution over a matter relating to one Chinyere Amuchinwa Igwegwe. In a statement by Mr. Hakim's counsel, Aloy Jimako, he says the decision by Justice Taiwo allowing the Attorney General of the Federation to take over prosecution of a Hakim after being exonerated by the police amounts to double jeopardy. He explained that the charges were already discontinued by the Nigeria police after they became aware that the charges were brought in flagrant disobedience of an extant order of a competent court. He, however, drew the attention of the public to the fact that the said Chinyere Amuchinwa is already standing trial before an FCT High Court after the police forensic evidence revealed that she was the one that allegedly produced the said video she had accused Hakim of, same set of facts that the Federal High Court made the instant ruling against. Elsewhere, the trial of Nollywood actor Olarewaju Omiyinka, popularly called Baba Ijesha, resumed today at the Lagos State Special Offences Court with the testimony of a child forensic expert, Olabisi Ajayi Kayode. Ajayi Kayode is Executive Director of Cheche Yara Foundation, a non-governmental organization founded to prevent child sexual abuse and provide emergency intervention for children. The witness, who told the court that she is a certified child forensic interview specialist, says she led the forensic team that interviewed the alleged victim of Baba Ijesha's consecutive sexual assault. Led in evidence by the Lagos State Director of Public Prosecution, Mrs. Olayinka Adeyemi, the expert testified that the alleged victim was bold, relaxed, cooperative, and could recall events when she was being interviewed. She said the clinical presentation of child sexual abuse was quite evident, and the alleged perpetrator engaged the child in sexual activity when she was 7 years old on 2 occasions. Ajayi Kayode said that after the interview, she drafted a forensic interview report which was tendered in evidence, along with a flash drive containing the digital recording of the interview session. Let's now join Anne Nwaudo, who is standing by for business news on the news at 10.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Kayode. Hello and welcome to Business News. Let's begin with the African Export-Import Bank, Afreximbank, having launched a financial market infrastructure, the Pan-African Payment and Settlement System known as PAPS, to enable intra-African trade and commerce payments. In a statement, the Afreximbank says the PAPS was developed in collaboration with the African Free Trade Area Secretariat and the Central Bank on the continent. The bank further explains that PAPS will simplify cross-border transactions on the continent, as well as reduce dependency on hard currency. PAPS is expected to save Africa more than $5 billion in payment transaction costs annually. The recent Memorandum of Understanding signed by the Nigeria Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative (NITI) with the anti-corruption agencies in the country will help Nigeria recover about 2.6 trillion naira from 77 oil and gas companies. The Executive Secretary of the agency, Dr. Oji Ogbonnaya Oji, also explains in Abuja at a presentation of the new board members that the agency is listed to work with NITI to ensure that money was recovered for the government, includes the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, the EFCC, the Independent Corrupt Practices and Other Related Offences Commission, the ICPC, and the Nigerian Financial Intelligence Unit. And the bearish trend continued today at the stock market, albeit with a flattish close. But let's hear more from Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
Hello and welcome to the Stock Market Report. September is certainly turning out to be 1 month not to be remembered for the domestic stock market, as a better part of it still remains negative due to continued sell pressure by investors. Oh dear. An additional 3 billion naira loss is knocked off from the total value of listed equities at the close of today's trading session on the Nigerian exchange. But in terms of percentage performance, the market's benchmark indicator ended the day almost flat, but in the red, down by 0.01%. However, this drop came with mixed sentiments across the sectoral performance chart, as the insurance and the banking counter of listed equities recorded losses, while the consumer goods, oil and gas, as well as the industrial goods sector recorded gains. The share price of AXA Mansard was most hit by the sell pressure, which affected 14 other equities. Skyview Aviation led a pack of 13 other gainers, up by about 9.9%, while Honeywell Flour contributed about 90% to more than 526 million units in volume of shares transactions worth over 3 billion naira. Now, it's just 2 trading days left for the month, so let's keep our expectations high for a rebound in the remaining sessions. And that's it on the Stock Market Report. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Back to you.
A rebound this week, but let's look at the closing numbers for other major markets around the world. And that's Business News tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Anne Nwaudo. It's back to you, Kayode.
Banking, so easy, so simple. Dial star 894 hash now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks, Anne. Still ahead on the news at 10, military leader in Guinea presents guidelines for civilian transition. bars members of the ruling council from participating in the country's election. Stay with us. Guinea's military junta has barred its members from running in the next elections, which will see the country return to civilian rule. Well, it comes a day after the junta announced a transitional charter confirming military leader Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya as a president. The charter also provides for a government headed by a civilian prime minister and a national transitional council that will temporarily act as a parliament. Simon Pusey has more international news in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. The British Army is being readied to help ease fuel supply problems after a fourth day of long queues and pump closures. Up to 150 military tanker drivers will prepare to deliver to forecourts which have run dry because of panic buying. There were ugly scenes due to the surge to buy fuel. Here, of fights breaking out in London as people rushed to stock up on petrol. The surge in demand has come due to fears that a driver shortage would hit fuel supply, even though there is more than enough at refineries. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps has admitted that Brexit has been a factor, despite his previous claims that the UK's exit from the EU had helped the country adjust to supply chain problems. Greta Thunberg has mocked world leaders, saying they were all talk, no action, as she took to the podium ahead of climate talks in Italy this week.
Build back better, blah, blah, blah. Green economy, blah, blah, blah.
Thousands of young people, including Thunberg, will converge on Milan this week, with some 400 from around 190 countries set to meet policymakers, either remotely or in person.
Net zero, blah, blah, blah. Climate neutral. Blah, blah, blah.
Their proposals will then be vetted by climate and energy ministers who are gathering at the same venue in Italy's financial centre for their pre-COP26 meeting later in the week.
We expect it to be like any other meeting.
North Korea has fired a short-range missile towards the sea off its east coast. That's according to South Korea's military. The test happened as North Korea's ambassador said at the UN that no one could deny Pyongyang's right to self-defense and to test weapons. Earlier this month, Pyongyang test-fired both ballistic and cruise missiles. But several days ago, North Korea had also expressed willingness to engage in talks with the South. The former president of Georgia has said he will fly home on the day of local elections to help, in his words, save the country. Mikhail Saakashvili, who is now based in Ukraine, called for post-election street protests. He said he plans to return despite facing imprisonment on charges he says are politically motivated. A Georgian court sentenced him in absentia to 6 years in prison for abuse of power in 2018. Spain's government has classified the island of La Palma, which has been struck by a volcanic eruption, as a disaster zone. The move means it will trigger emergency subsidies and other support measures. The government announced a first package of €10.5 million. Lava has been slowly flowing down the volcano's western flank towards the sea, destroying almost 600 houses, as well as churches and banana plantations on the island. Hundreds of people in coastal villages remain hunkered down in anticipation of lava emitted in previous days reaching the sea and releasing toxic gases. 4 people have been seriously hurt in an explosion and fire in a central residential area of the Swedish city of Gothenburg. Swedish TV showed footage of smoke emerging from the windows, as well as emergency services working at the scene. The immediate cause of the blast and blaze is unclear. Thai volunteers on paramotors are flying into flood-affected areas in central Thailand to drop off supplies to residents. A team of around 7 to 8 paramotorists have been flying around Sukhothai province, dropping food for local residents. Flooding triggered by a tropical storm has affected around 59,000 families across central and northern Thailand. The team say they will continue making trips to other affected areas across Sukhothai to help feed residents cut off by the flooding. And finally, turtles on a runway will probably never rival snakes on a plane, but one reptile has made headlines after delaying flights at Japan's second busiest airport. The turtle, which weighs just over 2 kilograms, was seen moving slowly along the tarmac at Narita International Airport near Tokyo, prompting a pilot preparing for takeoff to contact air traffic control. Staff removed the animal with a net and checked the 4,000-meter runway for any other foreign objects, causing a 15-minute delay to 5 flights. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Many thanks, Simon. Interesting news in the UEFA Champions League as Lionel Messi, the Argentine superstar, scored his first ever goal for PSG in stunning fashion as they beat Manchester City in a keenly contested encounter played at the Parc des Princes. Elsewhere, Club Brugge stunned RB Leipzig in Germany, while Atletico came from behind to beat AC Milan. Shakhtar held Inter to a goalless draw, while Real Madrid, 13-time champions, were defeated at the Santiago Bernabeu by Sheriff. Meanwhile, Chelsea midfielder Jorginho expects a tough Champions League clash against Juventus at the Allianz Stadium. Jorginho will make his 150th appearance for Chelsea if he plays in the Group H tie in Turin. A newly crowned world heavyweight boxing champion Alexander Usyk is back in Ukraine and expects a rematch against Anthony Joshua in February or March, and also wants to unify the division after that. The Ukrainian defeated Joshua in a boxing masterclass at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in London on Saturday in front of over 60,000 fans, earning a unanimous points decision to take his British rivals WBA, WBO, IBF and IBU belts. And that's a wrap on sports news.
Thank you, Ayo. And the main news again. The House of Representatives to probe disturbing advisory by the National Youth Service Corps, urging parents to prepare ransom for Corps members in case they are abducted in the course of the national call-up. And that's the news at 10. Thank you for watching. I'm Kayode Kikulu. Good night.